There has to be some kind of spaciousness and openness, and then an idea will pop out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for hopping on the call and getting an interview this morning, just because my whole podcast is about creativity, and
okay.
I also have a very spiritual background as well, and I practice meditation, I practice yoga, and I do find this connection between meditation and coming up with ideas and creativity, and so it's just great how your book is able to link all three of them, because I think it's really important to actually put, to combine heaven and earth, like you said.
Yes.
And so, in my question to you is, what's your thoughts on where ideas come from then? The creative ideas, since you have such a creative background and also a spiritual background.
Yeah. So, there's an interesting premise in Buddhism, the way that I learned it from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, which is the relationship between thought and non-thought.
Yes.
So idea is something entering the realm of thought. Obviously, you once you have an idea, there's kind of a narrative attached to it. So where does that emerge from? And what we would say in Buddhism is it emerges from non-thought, or kind of open space. And that's the actual nature of the mind, is that kind of clear knowingness, but not without much narrative already developed in it. And then it's like little bubbles appear on the surface of that great ocean. And those are called first thoughts. So my teacher used to say, first thought, best thought. That was a kind of slogan that he used. And the idea is that you have a kind of open space, and you're willing to allow space. And then from that emerges some kind of clear thought, which is an inspiration or intuition or first thought. And that's where the creative process begins, is that meeting zone of the non-thought coming into the thought realm. So that's what we would say, I think.
I love that, because I remember listening to Elizabeth Gilbert and one of her books about the idea of the genius and the demon, about the idea of an idea coming out from ethereal or from God or from somewhere else, and really being said through or being channeled through the person. And so
Yes.
I love the idea that non-thought and thought is a way to actually conjure up these ideas. And for you, as a musician, how do you get into your flow state? Do you find yourself going through a practice before you get into your creative flow state? Or have you found yourself kind of just doing it out of mere habit with all the years experience that you have?
Well, yeah, I mean, so my life is so interspersed between, sort of meditation practices and everyday life, and sort of taking care of just ordinary realities. And then creative things seem to come out, like they pop out, is what I would say. And I talked to a lot of other people about this process, and I'm in the process of talking to a lot of creative people about this process, which is step one, is these days I can have a full song with all the details occur in a dream. Mm-hmm. And then I wake up and I remember it and I just write it down. So like, who wrote that song? Did I write that song? I've told that. I just interviewed my friend David Kahn, who's Paul McCartney's producer, and wow. he said, well, you should take credit for it, because then you'll get the royalties. And I do, so I still consider it sort of my composition in a way, but it came like full blown. So usually there's some piece of it that comes out that way in a pop-up, just kind of a spontaneous burst of flow. And interestingly enough, I think the shower is one really great place. It's like it's between stuff. It's like it's if you sit down and try to crank it out, sometimes that can result in writer's blocks. But if you just kind of open your mind and you're relaxed, like while you're cooking or taking a shower or walking down the street. But as a creative person, you have to have your dream catcher out, and you have to be able to write it down immediately, because it'll just disappear as quickly as it came.
So true. I've actually talked to my creative friends about this, and a lot of creative people, they're trying to figure out how to live the creative lifestyle where they schedule their creativity, or they do it through flow and through spontaneity. So how do you feel when you are writing a book or whatnot? Do you like to write when you get that spontaneous idea, or do you like to schedule your time? Even if that time you don't get any great ideas, it's like you force yourself to get creative. Like, how do you
Yeah,
feel about
yeah. Well, in my book, Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck, I talk a lot about the stages of this process.
it? Mm-hmm.
So I think the first stage is actually relaxing and having some kind of softened approach to, you're not trying to squeeze something out or force anything. That's not a good ground for creative communication. It's not a good ground for co-writing with somebody. It's not a good ground for your own work. There has to be some kind of spaciousness and openness, and then an idea will pop out. I call that inception in the book.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first stage. Now, from there on in, there's a lot of parts of the process that are then become more deliberate. Maybe from there on in, you have to do a little work and leaning in and discipline. So you could have, like, for example, that book that I wrote. I have the idea for it. It comes out and, it's just quick. It's very easy. Then you go, okay, what's going to be the structure of this book? And I'm still in an intuitive realm, but then I'm starting to really use a little bit more of my sort of skill at structuring that's come over time, and there's work. That means, yeah, you should sit down for this hour and do that work. And then try to keep the flow going, but, and mixing in structure like pancake batter, it's like, you're mixing in structure with the flow state. And then at the end of the day, there are you have some decisions to make, which I talk about in the book. One is this going to be a product of some kind, or is it just going to be fun, And just like from a musical point of view, a jam session at somebody's house is for fun. You shouldn't be trying to create a product out of that. But now you come up with an idea from that, and you go, I want to make this a song. I want to do a recording of this song, and I want to pitch it to Carrie Underwood, let's say, whoever. That's work. And that needs discipline, time management, and effort. And you have to understand sales and marketing principles, product development. So that's in the book. I have a whole chapter on the business body, the different aspects of actually entering a business relationship with your creativity is a whole nother story.
Yeah, no, I love that. You had the 5 steps of your offering, the R&D, the sales and marketing, the administration, and the customer service, which was great. I love that part of your book, actually. It actually helped me look over my own creative endeavors and see what my offering was, because I'm a filmmaker. I'm also a DJ and a musician and an entrepreneur. And so I understand the idea of having to kind of combine my traits and my uniqueness and try to find what my unique offering is. And so I've always wondered, because you've also had that with your life, with your different passions. Yeah. Do you find that you like to keep, I would say, the different realms separate in order for you to keep a much more pure creative output in those realms? Or do you like being one day working on all 3 of your entrepreneurship, your Buddhism practices, your Dharma, as well as your music?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of preaching, if you will, the integration part of all this. Of course, they've occupied different, aspects of my life at different times, and there's been more emphasis on one than on the other. But at this stage of the game, it's all about kind of integration. I'm trying to help people, well, maybe like you and others, to kind of suss out the situation and see if an integration is possible where all 3 of those elements come together and you feel whole. You don't feel partitioned off. So my typical day will have, all those elements in it, and they're speaking to each other, they're conversing with each other. And I'm also training people. I'm doing a training programs called Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck. Like I have one coming up February 21st to 23rd at Tibet House here in New York City. Beautiful. And we engage every part of the participants. We're doing some training and some practice in mindfulness meditation. We're talking about the creative process, and then we're also looking at the kind of offering coming into the marketplace. So for somebody who's not clear about how to execute that, there are some principles I think people can learn, and they can clarify their relationship to those areas better by integrating the 3 than by keeping them separate.
That's great, because I think I'm the same way. For me, the integration for all of those is in music videos, because I love music, I love filmmaking, and I love helping people. And so I found that a lot of my content is really around syncing visuals with music. Yeah. And as you get into, working with people and hearing their stories about the different pursuits they want or the passions they want or their different creative skills, do you tell them, I know in the book you said that even if you were to consult yourself, you'd say, don't spread yourself too thin. But if you were to tell someone who was passionate about dance, at the same time loved to cook, and then at the same time loved music, what would you say to someone like that on how to make a livelihood or where to go next with those passions?
It's so interesting because one of my millennial friends, I'm on a kind of millennial kick lately. Obviously, I'm a boomer, but the millennials are a lot of, that's kind of a crowd of people I really feel like talking to and connecting dots between the sort of like the ancient mariner and the millennial, because you got to put together, what's happening now with what's gone before. Otherwise, as you know, history is just doomed to recreate itself. So, but I find a lot of commonalities in terms of, and one of them is this, what you just described, Mitchell, is what they call the hyphenate. In other words, a lot of millennials don't want to define themselves as one thing or another. They want to use the hyphens. What did you just say? I'm a DJ, screenwriter.
DJ, filmmaker, entrepreneur. I love martial arts. I meditate. I practice yoga. I go on hikes. I'm a traveler. I'm a great friend. I'm a family person. So it's so true what you say, the idea of identity. And I think that millennials like myself, we don't want to be stuck in that identity. I think it's because
well, that's where the hyphens come in. That's where the hyphens come into play, right?
Yeah. And I remember reading a book, How to Be Everything, and the idea of being proud of being a multi-hyphenate. But I also feel there is a certain, I would say, hard to focus reality when it comes to a multi-hyphenate, where even myself, my days are split up between business and then my movie creation time where I come up with ideas. And then at the same time, on the weekends, I have a DJ residency. And so it's switching these hats, but also they all play in with each other. And I love how you're helping people integrate that.
The bottom line then comes into like the reason I like business as a quote unquote spiritual practitioner, and I'm one who likes business as opposed to seeing it as, and I put a picture of a dollar bill on the cover of what is essentially a kind of quote unquote spiritual book, deliberately to annoy people if possible. Like that's the practical dimension. That's not sin or crime or neurosis. Money is just the means of exchange as I see it, and it's very neutral. So you have to make an offering, and then you have to receive, and you have to offer in life. We're I/O portals. We're input and output, and when people start to output, at a certain point, you can see very quickly, are they making ends meet? Like you can take a Dharma center. Are they making ends meet? Or are they always scraping by for money? The Democratic candidates, are they making ends meet? Or are they just begging for money? To me, somebody who has is in sync, there will be some element of thriving within their arena. They don't have to be gouging. They don't have to be greedy. They don't have to be manipulative. But there should be some element of reasonable prosperity, and that person can handle reality, and they can pay their rent, and they're not afraid of that part of the world. In fact, they like that part of the world because it's kind of a reality check, isn't it?
It is. And I like how you actually had this portion of the book where you talked about how materialism and the idea of success can also be used in the spiritual world, how people would judge someone because they're not spiritual enough, they're not practicing enough. And it's the same thing as judging someone for not making enough money or not having the car. And I love that because I do remember there was a time in my life where I was going to a lot of spiritual festivals, and there was a moment where I found myself not being accepted because I wasn't dressing the same, I wasn't moving the same, talking the same. And it was so hypocritical that you can have this open community that loves everyone, but if you don't look or act like them or eat like them, then you aren't really accepted.
Sure.
And do you find now with spirituality and meditation and mindfulness on the rise with meditation apps like Headspace and Mind Valley doing a really good job online, do you feel that spiritual practices becoming commodity and really losing its true pure flavor and purpose?
It's such a great question. And of course, the people who are saying, oh, it's losing its purity, I was never in that camp in the first place. That wasn't this. That I studied with the great Tibetan master. He was never in that camp. He said spiritual activity, everyday life is the same.
Love it.
If you distinguish between those two things, you're making an artificial distinction, basically. So the purity aspect of it, and then you become judgmental about who's pure, who's not pure. That's why I use the metaphor of heaven and earth. There's a pure element to it, which is, let's say, kind of spontaneous and open element, and then there's a very practical side, and that's true for everything. That's true for, talk to somebody who's trying to meditate and their knee is screwed up. That's the material world. That's the physical world. You don't go, oh, my knee is not me. It's just like I'm in a transcendent state. And a lot of people try to get into transcendent states when they're meditating, but their knee hurts. So what are you transcending?
Yes.
You want to transcend your knee, or you want to include your knee?
It's interesting you say that, because when I was, a lot of my friends who are in the spiritual community who are creatives, and they do go through the idea of money being I would say the detrimental part of a artist, because it actually takes away from your artistry, the idea of making money for your art. And I remember, even growing up, being in hip hop and the idea of making money and, selling out. I remember the idea of selling out to Generation X was so not cool.
Yeah, sure.
And it's all about the art, being all about the art. And I feel like now with creativity, there's so many avenues for an artist to make a living. And I feel like it's an honorable thing to get compensated for your creativity.
Sure.
Do you feel, when you do talk to a lot of creative people, there is a consistent limiting belief or an idea of money that they have that's really limiting them from finding that success or that idea or a thriving lifestyle?
Well, it's interesting to explore. My mother was a Broadway producer. She was the first woman to win a Tony Award for producing a Broadway play. And she used to say, the entertainment business, you can make a killing, but you can't make a living. So that's an interesting point. And there are a lot of people in the entertainment business in various aspects of it. Not everybody's like the artist, but there's people who are, recording engineers and marketing people and, all kinds of people around it. Is it possible to have what Buddha would call right livelihood and be a creative? That's really a $64 question. That's a great question. So what have you found? Is that possible?
It is. And I feel that it's what you said in the book, and how I also tell my friends and a lot of people, it's how you define success, how you can tolerate certain materialistic restrictions. I mean, if you're feeling like you're just starting off with music, but you want to drive a Lamborghini and live in the Hollywood Hills and travel the world and go to the Amalfi Coast whenever you want, you have to be real with your situation and the idea of course, practice and learning and developing your craft, and also putting out something that the audience wants or the market wants. And I've been fortunate enough to have a creative lifestyle and life and career and business where I do get paid and compensated for my creativity. And I'm very fortunate and very happy and grateful for that. And actually what this podcast is all about is to actually to help people who are in 9-to-5 jobs or pursuing careers where they don't feel passionate or fulfilled or living a meaningful life, and they have this creative side to them that they've always shut down because of what society or their parents or their friends have told them about the idea of the artist life, the poor artist, the starving artist. Sure. And I really want to help others really look into their creativity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be their full-time job or full-time career. It can be something they do on the weekends or at night just to de-stress. And I feel that with people who are in 9-to-5 jobs they don't really love or appreciate, and they have this creative urge, they're doing a really big disservice to themselves and the world for not sharing that gift. And it turns out to become a stressful part of them that results in a health issue or disease or something else. And so that's why I love how your book really combines spirituality with this, because I feel that meditation has helped me and helped a lot of people that I know find what that purpose is, find what that meaning in life really means to them, and helps them pursue it. And as you grow with, your business and your book and and everything that you do with your workshops, is there a specific, I would say, person that you love to reach, or is it something where you like the whole world to understand what you're trying to give them?
In the book, as you know, I talked about once you have your offering, there's kind of and you bring it to the marketplace. So it's clarifying your mindset about what you're doing. That's the first step, and then out of that, the offering emerges with some kind of clarity. And then you're deciding whether it's an offering for livelihood or offering for, for enjoyment. And if it's an offering for livelihood, then you have to bring in sort of the business aspect and dimension of it and be skillful with that. Otherwise, that your basic purpose there will not be resolved. So, the question is as you move forward in that process, when do you get to the point where you are hitting your obstacles? Your challenges, for example, as you know, many creative people do not like to market themselves, and they hire other people, or they run into a cul-de-sac, a blockage where they go, I don't have the money to hire somebody, I don't want to do this myself, or I don't think I'm worthy, or whatever obstacle that they're facing. But that's good news. You see, from the point of view of both spiritual practice and livelihood, obstacles are good news. If you're not hitting obstacles, you're not really going anywhere. When you have comfort and sort of, a settled quality, you're not really meeting any kind of challenge, and you're missing an opportunity to grow and expand what your capacity is. So I think that's a key point, is that what many entrepreneurs and what many yoga studio owners and many people who are trying to create something, the obstacle they hit is either one of two things: either a lack of self-worth, which I call poverty mentality in the book, or a feeling of out of their depth with certain aspects of skill sets that they would need to develop. And the most common ones are marketing and administration. That's what most creatives just go nuts trying to figure out, or cry into their coffee cup at the end of the day. Nobody knows what I'm doing, and I don't know how to put this together in a kind of operational level. So once you're there, the offering can either be content-driven or market-driven. So the two analogies I used, I think you remember, one was and hip-hop. It was a content-driven project. Nobody had any idea what hip-hop was. And so, but somebody said, I want to mix, street poetry with a kind of R&B rhythm section. Well, that's a cool idea, but it's totally content-driven. And then people heard it, and they go, what the hell is that? And then at a certain point, it catches on. Now it's really everybody knows what it is. And if you're writing a hip hop song now, it's market driven. You need to get into the marketplace and go like, this is a good version of what people are into, and therefore I can sell it. So the content driven versus market driven is a huge topic. And you have to assess, what your offering is, and then is it something that is going to be really unique, original, and then you're going to have to, really communicate very well about what it is. And the example I used is like, personal computers was like that. Nobody knew what it was or why they needed one. So the whole job was communicating that. Or if you have a great new computer now, you just tell people what's better about it.
Yeah.
As a DJ, do you market yourself as a DJ?
That's a question that I've always asked myself, as well as other multi-hyphenates. Because when it comes to marketing, the idea of the brand online, is it something that you create separate profiles for, or is it one integrated profile? And so I've actually integrated mine, because before I did say, I am a filmmaker, one profile. And then the next Instagram would be, I'm a DJ. And then the next one would be, I am a professional. Then I remember just attending a conference with Brendon Burchard, and it was called Growth Summit. And there was a really good point that he made, was that if your fans really do love you and appreciate you and support you, they are open to your many identities. And that's what makes you unique. As in, me as a filmmaker who's also a DJ at the same time as an entrepreneur, that makes me unique. It's how I would say there are a lot of musicians and like people like A-Track, who owns his own record label, who is also a well-known DJ and a EDM producer. And so he puts it all under one profile. And there's a lot of different types of artists that I've seen and creative people that I've seen who've actually integrated everything, because I feel these are the days where if you are a musician or an artist or a creative, you would have to be an entrepreneur. Because trying to get into the record industry now, it's not as, I would say, attractive as before. A lot of people do want to actually do their own, let's say, SoundCloud or Spotify or Bandcamp campaign and then try to go independent. And same thing goes with filmmakers. I've seen a lot of filmmakers and creators going through the YouTube route and not really going through the traditional write a spec or create a short film and go this festival route. And so, even for myself, marketing myself as the DJ, I've really integrated it within my own profile.
Well, here's a simple question, Mitchell. Here's like two simple questions that I think everybody listening could ask themselves. One is, how much money do you need to make or want to make? Mm-hmm. Because that's a very realistic thing. You need X to pay the rent and to buy your organic kale salads, and whatever you need for your life. And I'm only talking to people who are not independently wealthy, because they can do whatever they want. And that's not who this conversation is really for. There are other conversations that we could have with them. But take the average person that we're talking to and talking about and gathering a community to have this conversation, which is what we're doing basically. How much money do you need to make? And how much money would you like to make? So just you have some idea of being able to answer those two questions. And then how much money are you making? And then who's signing those checks? Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you look at a multi-hyphenate like yourself, and I'm assuming you have your own apartment in LA, right? Do you?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming there's rent there and they're not giving it to you for free?
Yeah, there's definitely rent there.
And I'm assuming people pay you for the services that you've outlined there in varying degrees. Where's the major portion of that coming from?
It's coming mostly from my video business, from creating branded content, consulting companies on video content, and producing films. That's where most of my income comes from, actually.
So you remember there's a saying in the book or chapter in the book is, don't forget to feed the cash cow. Mm-hmm. We got to look at that and go, I have to at least be practical enough to go, I need to put time and energy into that aspect of what I'm doing to make sure while I'm cultivating these other arenas that this is not losing losing energy and momentum. So that's always an interesting thing as people kind of ramble around. For many years, I've made my livelihood doing various things, and the one thing I kind of like, I personally counsel quite a lot of people one-to-one, via Skype and FaceTime and stuff like that, and maybe meeting once a month to talk about meditation, talk about livelihood. But the main thing is for you to establish, A, is that really where you want your livelihood to come from? And B, if you want it to come from somewhere else, is that you have a migration plan to get from here to there, because Confucius say, man or woman who change horses in midstream better have two horses.
I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because this was the year. It's so funny you said that, because this was the year where I realized that I wanted to, of course, focus on the main thing, keep the main thing. And it has been video production, and it's been really focusing on that part of my life. And the idea of being a DJ and a music producer has taken a backseat, and it's something that I do more as I would say, a hobby. Although I do have a residency here in LA that I like to have as a way for me to express myself and DJ and get paid for it. Yeah. But yes, a lot of the focus has been on my business and really growing that, because my skills in that business has really evolved and enhanced over the years because of my focus on what I truly want to accomplish, which is creating content that inspires people, which can be done through video. Yeah. And so even this podcast, what we even talked about today, I feel is so inspiring, so valuable for all the creative people And I think that's who you're speaking out to really is just the creative world, and a lot of people who are trying to figure out what they can make as their livelihood when they look at their passions and their skill sets.
Yeah. And remember, I'm a little older. I've been around longer and have had certain experiences in which I've made good choices and somewhere made bad choices. So I say that in the book is like the mistakes you make are going to be the most informative. That's you want to meet a wise person, meet somebody who's made a lot of mistakes. Then you'll find out. If you're looking for a wise person who hasn't made a lot of mistakes, you're probably going to just find a gifted, smart person, but not a wise person. So I'm trying to, at this stage, for me in my life, it's very important for me to talk to people like you, share this journey, and create some kind of community based around the topic that you know, like the CSM workshops that we're leading are all about getting a group of people like us together and sharing the experience and sharing the wisdom and networking some, developing some kind of basic sanity in the process, so we don't just recreate a hyper-materialistic culture, which nobody seems to really want to do, but you could do it by accident. You know, we want to create a mindful culture, and we want to, have some kind of contemplative aspect to life, so that it's not totally helter-skelter. And then we want to be creative and work together with people. So I'm interested in creating that platform. And it's not really just about me being up in front of everybody and waving my arms around and going blah, blah, blah. It's really about creating a kind of conversation and a community. And so this, it sounds like we're right on the same page with that. It's very inspiring to talk to you.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of community has been very important, and actually a reoccurring theme in my podcast interviews with a lot of creative people. The idea of tapping into your friends, your creative community, and community in general for support, for ideas, for I would say confirmation of ideas and also affirmations and everything. A community has helped so many creative people.
Sure.
If it doesn't have to be a community of 20, it could be a community of 2 or 3, whatever it is. Having a support system is really helpful for creatives, because it is being vulnerable. Being a creative person is like bringing out a baby into the world and having the world judge how the baby looks and if it's acceptable. And I think that with vulnerability comes a lot of fear. And I think that with that fear, like you said, that's why a lot of creative people don't like to market themselves.
Here's the irony in my world. Coming up in the music business in the 70s, which is when I had my kind of first, I was in my early 20s, and it was strangely and magically a time in which the possibility of prosperity and creativity it was possible to combine them. So, for example, Warner Brothers Records in the 70s was the kind of community you're talking about. And there were very good business people at the top of it, and they were starting to sell a lot of records, but they were really looking for creatives and encouraging creatives, and I was one of those people. So the rest of my life, I thought, boy, later on, I'd love to provide that for other people coming up. But the music business and the entertainment business have changed so significantly towards a, kind of supremely materialistic outlook. They fake it now, but they're not really convincing me or anybody else that there's anything other than money at stake, And, so this, as you said, the internet has now provided a more community-based experience, and it's spreading out the access again the way it was. So this is something that is probably mostly a healthy situation to not allow power and wealth to get super consolidated. That's never really that healthy if it just vests and nests into the hands of too small a group of people, and they become the tastemakers and the governors, and then regular people don't get to participate in the whole experiment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the complaint right now with Spotify, right? The idea of having to get part of a playlist in order to get recognized, and it's either that or going into trying to get something on the radio. And there was the whole movement of SoundCloud, a few years ago, where that was an independent movement. Yet when Spotify came in and everyone migrated to Spotify, the idea of trying to get on a playlist, which is really controlled by a few governing parties, it's gotten back to, the record labels really controlling what is cool and what's going to be popular. And so I do feel there is going to be this new resurgence of, I would say, independent marketing for independent labels and musicians. Sure. But it's an exciting time. I love the time now because, like I said before, as a creative, you have to be an entrepreneur. These days, and so the creative mind has now become the business mind, and those two married together with spirituality. I feel that's why your book is so powerful. I love the idea of marrying the three, and so. Yeah. So I want to acknowledge you for creating such a powerful book, and the way that you're able to have a journaling aspect and a workbook aspect throughout it. I was going through the whole workbook myself and journaling myself, and so it's a joy to actually talk to you about it. And I'm really looking forward to what you're actually going to be putting out more out there. And I'd love to join one of your workshops and meet you in person, because I really do enjoy talking with you, because you have such great history and experience with the music industry and success and failures and rebuilding and hardships in life. And for you to overcome a lot of the hardships you went through, and you talk about in the book with your family, it's amazing to see where you are now and see the positive attitude that you have given through your book and show through people with your workshop. So thank you for that.
That is so kind of you to say, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, as a creative person, it's just trying to, show people how beautiful life is when you can be compensated for your creative talents. And to have you put that in a book, we're helping a lot of people out there. And hopefully the listener right now is getting inspired.
When will this podcast be online?
I'm hopefully in the 2 weeks or next week, probably the next 2 weeks.
Okay, because since you mentioned, my real goal is to actually get together with people in non-virtual space, and we've been doing these workshops, and they're just super fun and creative. So there is one in New York, as I mentioned, at Tibet House, but it either will be just upcoming February 21st to 23rd. So if you're hearing this before then, come join us. And I have one of the greatest guitar players in the world, Julian Lage, is going to kind of sit in with me on the Friday night part of the workshop, the 21st. And we're actually including things like talking about meditation. Then he's going to play a little mini concert, nice. So that's the kind of atmosphere. And then over the course of the weekend, we'll be exchanging, really having the kind of conversation you and I are having right now, and just doing some practice together. And then the next iteration, though, since you're in LA, is I'm doing a mindfulness meditation teacher training program at Samarasa Studio in Echo Park in LA. Do you live near there?
No, I've done yoga there.
Oh, far out. Okay, so we've had 2 years in a row, a very successful and great gathering of a tribe of kind of younger meditators and people getting into it. So this is a 100-hour mindfulness meditation training certification that will start April 24th is the first weekend, 24th to 26th. And then I'll be there, every month. And the Friday night of each of those weekends, you can go to Samarasa's website and find this, is going to be a CSM night. And
nice.
And the level 1 weekend is just open to anybody in terms of you don't have to take the teacher training. It's kind of an overview of the Buddhist path and the intro to meditation practice. So we're combining those things. Every Friday night is going to be a CSM like kind of conversation like this, and we'll have special guests. And then the mindfulness meditation teacher training. So hopefully I get to meet you then, Mitchell. That if you're around that weekend, you could come by.
Yeah, I would love to. I will be here. And funny enough, in April, I'm going to go to Bali Spirit Fest to film at the festival for my friends who is a DJ and producer who just released an app that is a meditation app. But what it is that it's using binaural beats and ambient music, but in a cool way. She's actually getting a lot of big EDM and hip hop and producers in the industry to create meditation and ambient music. So meditation is more of a cool thing to listen to on Spotify. And so I would love to share this music with you because like 10-minute meditation tracks, but they're really well made. A lot of them are really cool. And I think it's a way for them and us to actually bring in this new school of meditators and spirituality enthusiasts by creating music that they would actually like to listen to. when they are meditating. But David, I just wanted to say thank you so much for, this conversation and for your book and for what you provide for the world. And I definitely want to come out in April. And, before we go, because I know you're busy, I want to ask you, what's some last Uncle Irv, little old lady, sage advice you give to creative people out there who are, let's say, pursuing a career or in a career that they don't like, but they want to actually pursue a much more creative lifestyle?
Well, I remember we started by talking about first thought, best thought, right? So the first thoughts that came up are, move towards clarity in your own mind before you try to reorganize the highway and the furniture. Before you move the furniture around, get clarity in your own mind about who you are and what you want to try to accomplish. Mm-hmm. That's step one. Step two, don't give up. Have faith in yourself and have faith in the human race and in the world, and come from a positive place, no matter how challenging the times might be. That's number two. And number three is don't be lazy. Mm-hmm.
I love how you break down laziness in your book too.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to be a maniac, tight-wound person, but we have to exert ourselves to accomplish anything. So I don't mean that in a harsh way. I mean it in a gentle way, but just to kind of marshal your resources and keep putting it out there and try to come from a place of clarity about what you're trying to accomplish rather than blaming the situation. So. Those are basic, obviously, kind of core values, but I try to adhere to those.
No, that's outstanding advice, and I actually feel that a lot of creative people out there will be inspired by that, and especially the ground path fruition process that you lay out in your book as well. So, thank you so much, David, and I think that a lot of people are going to be very happy with this podcast. And before you go, actually, can you tell people where to find you online? I think you have a website or whatever else they should visit.
Well, it's davidnichtern.com, which is the link to the, all the things we're talking about are sort of synced up from there. Facebook.com/davidnichtern is a way to sort of stay, on with the current stuff. But I think the website links you through to everything. And the other thing is just check out the book, Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck by David Nichtern. I think the more people are entering that conversation, the book was meant to be a kind of drawdown on like, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about, everybody. And whoever's interested, let's get together. So if you're ever going to be someplace near where I'm going to be, I do want to meet you. I like meeting people like Mitchel. I definitely want to meet you and in a non-virtual space and really, connect, because it sounds like you're exactly on the journey that we're talking about. It sounds like a perfect conversation to me. Yeah. Unlike Donald Trump's, which was not a perfect conversation.
Yeah, that we weren't going to go down that road in this conversation.
This is a perfect conversation.
Yeah, and I would love to meet you as well, just because your experience, your background, your whole vibe, and everything that you've talked about today and in your book, it really speaks to me. And I think it speaks to a lot of my friends and people that I know who really want to have a fulfilling and meaningful life. It really is merging heaven and earth. So thank you so much, David. And I think we'll be keeping in touch over email. So I'll talk to you soon. And everyone out there, please check him out. It's an amazing book, and please attend his workshops. They're awesome. Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com, and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchel Dumlao. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.